going to talk a little bit about mining industry perspectives, but I think we've already heard from Cripple Creek and Victor, which is typical for large mining operations, both here and elsewhere in the world. And I've had the opportunity to work from the very smallest to the very largest, both here and abroad. I think what we're going to talk about here this time is a little more focused on, let's just say, southwestern Colorado or the San Juans, which is typically narrow vein mining country. And narrow vein mines leave a footprint very different from the Cripple Creek and Victor mine, open pit mine, or the Climax mine that many of you know up by Leadville. So, we're talking about mining today and in the future. That's not mining in the past. We've had a lot of talk today about the impact of past mining, and that's important. I've been a member of the Animas River Stakeholders Group, member of the coordinating committee recently with Peter and Bill for about 17 years, and we've been working on how do we address the impacts from past mining and improving water quality in Animas River. So that's one way to look at it. Today, I'm going to say most of the mineral resources that we know about have been mined at some time before, but that doesn't mean that they're economically mined out. When gold was $250 an ounce a few years ago, many of our potential gold properties here were, they were not economically viable. Nobody was very interested. Now, when gold is $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 an ounce, that's a very different story. So that's the present and looking toward the future. In the old days, you just went in and went to work. I mean, San Juan County and Silverton was the first county seat in western Colorado. And for about 50, 60 years, metal mining was the economic driver in southwestern Colorado. That's what agriculture depended on. That's why it developed. That's why everything else came here, railroads, whatever, that was the economic driver. And that's changed, and there are a lot of good things about that. In Silverton, I came here in the 70s. If you look at the 60s, 70s, 80s, when the Sunnyside mine and in the 70s, Hardrock was still open, it was a nice mix in the community. You had mining, you had tourism, you had a few other things, and everybody sort of worked together and got along. I think in planning future mines, present mines and future mines, a concept of working with communities in looking at what's the impact of a mining operation on the community from a social standpoint as well as an economic standpoint, and what's the community going to look like when a mining operation closes, and what can you do in designing the mine to minimize the adverse effects of that. And that's part of the way the industry thinks and looks at things now. Everybody has buzzwords, and that's fundamentally in the industry what the industry calls sustainable mining. It's not about, when I first heard the term sustainable mining, I thought that's kind of an oxymoron, because a mineral deposit's limited. You just mine it out, it's gone. So what is sustainable mining? Well, sustainable mining is about communities and about people. Going back to some comments that were made earlier today, everything, not only in this room, but in your lives, comes either from growing something or you mine it. And that's our way of life is dependent on that. Mineral resources occur where they occur. There's not much we can change about that. And as far as I know, there's nothing more being made. So, whether we're mining in North America, in Colorado, or somewhere else in the world, we're really dealing in the same community because all metals are traded and sold on international metal markets, and so the pricing is international, the economics are international. So to some extent, wherever you are, you're in the same marketplace. The environmental consequences of mining are, of course, the thing we're really talking about today. We've talked about the past, looking at the present and the future, which the folks we just heard from The RMS talk about their job is to try to make sure that we have looked at the things we should have looked at in terms of environmental issues and to some extent some safety issues. And that's good. We have a totally different atmosphere to operate in today than there was in the past. Environmental consequences are perhaps one of the most important things in planning a mine operation. That's one of the things that one of our speakers today, Karen Caddis from Ecosphere Environmental, will talk about in just a minute. Bob Larson, who's a geologist from Uray, was in Uray, has worked in the industry a long time. Probably as long as he remembers. It's going to talk about industry perspective, supplying our nation's mineral needs from local sources. And I'll let Bob go ahead and start on this. And let's give Bob a hand.